دختر خوب دختر خوب یک رمانیه که تازه خوندم، خیلی خوب بود، خیلی جالب بود و نویسندش از آلمان، پدر مادرش از افغانستانن و الان در آمریکا زندگی میکنه. دختر خوب به زبان انگلیسی نوشته شده است و امیدوارم یک روزی به زبان فارسی ترجمه بشه، ولی من اگر وقت داشتم خودم میکردم، ولی من وقت ندارم، کسی دیگه باید ترجمهش کنه. Hey everybody, Professor August here, and today I'm going to be talking about Good Girl, or Dochter Khub by Aria Aber. It was published in 2025 by Hogarth. I love this book. My God. I was excited to pick up the book because of the story. So, like, I read the synopsis and I thought, oh, this sounds like it's going to be an interesting book. And then when I picked it up, I immediately dreaded reading it because I've seen so much hype around this book. And previously, when I've seen hype around a book and I've picked it up, I thought, it wasn't the best. So there are quite a few books I've read in the last couple of years that were longlisted for awards and shortlisted for awards and won some awards, and they got a lot of press on social media. And then after I read them, I'm like, really? And some of them I didn't even finish reading. I DNF them, and I'm not going to name names because I know people love these books. So I was kind of weary when I picked this one up because I didn't want to dislike it, and I gotta say, I didn't. I loved it. It was very, very good. There were two things in particular that I loved about this book. The first is, like, I'm in my 30s, so I don't quite remember everything about being 19. Like, 19 for me was over a decade ago now. So I remember the feelings I had when I was 19. I remember the conversations, I remember my friends, but I don't quite remember the mindset I had when I was 19 years old. And I've read books before that are from a teenager's perspective, and they're kind of cringe sometimes because you just think, like, oh, you can tell that it's being written by like a 30-year-old, a 40-year-old, a 60-year-old. This book just perfectly encapsulated what it was like to be 19 years old. Just the mindset, the people coming and going out of your life, the decisions people make. And so I thought that was super well done. And I loved the book for it. The second thing I loved about this book was it's not just all positive, wonderful, I'm a strong woman and I'm going to get through all my hardships. There are too many books these days. I feel like it's very cliched to have a character at the end of a book, have some sort of self revelation and realize their difficulties in life. They've overcome a lot, so they're going to be able to overcome everything else in their lives, and everything's going to work out great. It's like, yeah, all right. It's just it happens too often in books. This book, it does have a positive ending. It does have like a hopeful ending, but I love the fact that the character, even though the character is strong and does make decisions for herself, she is also full of shame. She just it's like reading around a real human being. We all make decisions that we know we have to make for ourselves because they're decisions that are going to help us in our futures. But our families, our friends, they might feel bad about those decisions, or they might tell us off for making those decisions. And so we sometimes feel shame, even though we're making the right choice. And so I love that about this character and about the book. It weaves positive, uh, like, aspirations and hardships and shame, and it's really, really well done. And I didn't feel like the ending was cliched in any way, or followed any specific type of trope that makes us think like, okay, this was written just to sell. It was written because the writer is a really good writer and was able to weave all of these things together. So yeah, if you haven't read it, I highly suggest picking it up because it encapsulates just a perfect, mindset at the age of 19 in a very specific period of history, which was like around 2010, 2011. Really well done. The book is about a girl named Nila who is Afghan German, and it really is about identity and shame and coming of age. There are a lot of themes in this book that are familiar to us as a Western audience, and it's really like, I'm as an American, there's a lot about Europe and about Germany that I don't know because I haven't lived there or experienced life over there. But the author does a really good job of weaving in themes that are super familiar to all Western audiences. So she's growing up in territory in a part of Germany that was, like, I think part of East Germany, and so it's kind of the ghetto. She's poor, her family's poor, they're immigrants, And so you get the sense that she's super uncomfortable with her surroundings, especially because she's surrounded by neo-Nazis, by white like skinheads, and she keeps mentioning seeing swastikas and Nazi symbols. And so she, like her surroundings are not the best. And throughout the book, it weaves in issues of terrorism. So this is like white supremacist terrorism against immigrants. And so now that we're living in a society where white supremacy and like white terrorism against immigrants is just par for the course, it is just the way Western society is these days. It worked really well. It's not a foreign concept to an American. Like we're living in a day and age where we just see it on the news, and we see it in our government, and we see it in the way people behave on social media. And so that part of it was really well done. Um, so the book just follows this character in like a 1 year span of her life. She loves clubbing, she loves taking drugs, and she is really struggling to navigate her two identities, that of a Western modern German girl and that of a traditional Afghan Muslim girl. And the author does a really nice job of weaving those two things together. There are a lot of characters in this book, but I'm really only going to focus on two of them. And that's because a lot of the other characters, aside from the main two characters, they're kind of like they kind of blend together. They're hard to tell apart. I think this was done deliberately by the author. Um, at that age, at the age of 19, the people in our lives seem so important, super important to us. But as you grow up and you get older and older, there's like some of them just fall away. They do their own thing. You do your own thing. You lose touch with one another. Um, and the fact that these characters kind of are ephemeral, they appear and they disappear, they appear and they disappear, I thought was really well done. So like, yes, they all have names and they all have sort of personality traits, but they're not super fleshed out characters. And so I think like that part of it was well done. They're just there to sort of carry the two main characters forward. Nila is the main character. She's a 19-year-old Afghan German, and her boyfriend, yeah, boyfriend, he's a 37-year-old American loser expat living in Germany. Um, he's he's just, I disliked that character so much. So let's start with him. He's a writer. He has one like he's like a one hit wonder. He wrote a book at a really young age and it got published. And he moved to Europe and is kind of living his, I don't know, Kerouacian dream. Like he thinks at the age of 37 he knows everything about the world, and he's kind of snobby, and he's addicted to drugs, and he loves partying, and he like in the club he thinks that's real life. Like to him that is what life is, the sensations and the drug induced whatever hallucinations or whatever he's having, like that to him is real life. And so he's not the most likable character. And also, he is 37 years old. He's dating this 19-year-old, and he also has like other girls that are introduced in the book that he dates here and there. You just think like, all right, here's a guy who's dating somebody who's like basically half their age, and he's super manipulative. That's not a word. Manipulative. Why can't I say that? Manipulative. So he manipulates Nila and some of the other characters, and I don't know. I don't really like him. And he really is just a loser. But because he's older, I guess this 19-year-old finds him attractive, or like he's this suave older guy. Like, all right, yeah, we've all been there where we think like somebody who's older than us is super wise and knows everything. But yeah, he's 37 years old. He doesn't know that much. Um, and then the main character is Nila, who I loved. I thought she was fantastic. She's a teenager who's just navigating between her life in Germany as a young Western girl and her family heritage as a like strict Muslim Afghan traditions. She has a hard time navigating the two worlds because for her, like being Afghan is shameful in Germany. There's so many Turkish and Muslim immigrants in Germany that she finds it hard to actually tap into her heritage. So she tells people that she's like Greek or Israeli or whatever else, anything other than Afghan. And so she doesn't use her full name. Her full name is Nila, named after a river. And she drops the B and she says her name is Nila, which sounds a little more Western. And then, so like, that's her life as a Westerner. She pretends she's not Afghan. And then in her traditional world with her parents and with her family, she tries to play the good girl, but there's always, like, her family can tell she's not, like, in their mindset, she's not a good girl. And so they always warn her not to be Dokhtar Kharab, like, a broken girl. They want her to be Dochter Khub, a good girl. And so she has a hard time kind of dealing with the expectations that her family has of her, especially since it's a very patriarchal um, type of culture where she has to do certain things and not shame the family. So like the two characters work well together on the page because Marlowe is kind of an ass, and she is a 19-year-old who is kind of naive, but also really self reflective and understands sometimes that this older guy, even though he may say that he knows what's right and what's good in the world, she can kind of gauge that for herself and decide whether or not Marlowe is actually a good guy. He's not. This book is actually really easy to read. It's not very long, and I think I read it in two sittings over 2 days. There's some German in there, like place names. So if you're not familiar with German place names, like you might just look at a map or something. But like most of it, you don't even have to look up because they're just like street names. Even like when I'm reading books that are based in the United States, I don't know street names, so I just kind of like ignore them. So there's that, and I think there was some Persian in there, but not much. So it's actually really easy to read. It's very lucid language, and there aren't many sections that are like super florid and elevated so that you get slogged down in the language. So it's really easy to get through. Um, there are certain themes in the book that might be a little difficult. So there are the issues of death and terrorism and white supremacy and skinheads and neo-Nazis. So like those things might be a little difficult to get through, but for the most part, the writing is so well done that it all just kind of lends itself to a quick and easy read. So I really do think it's a good book. If you've read it, let me know what you think. If you haven't read it, you should get a copy of it and read it because it is actually a fantastic read. So I'm curious to see what other people think about it. All right, bye. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe below. Catch you in the next video.